Sketching is a critical skill during design. Have you seen this design before? What do you think it is? This is known as the Juicy Salif, designed by Philip Stark in 1990. It's actually an orange juicer. So you take the orange, you squeeze it, or I think a lemon juicer, you squeeze it, and then the juice comes down and drips off the bottom. It's an iconic design, somewhat usable, but very beautiful. And the first sketches were made on a napkin. And you can take a look at how many there were, because sketching is really fast, and how they vary from abstract to concrete. So here's the napkin. You can see that there's a whole bunch of different designs. And in fact, the reason this design came out the way it did is because Philippe was thinking about designing a rocket ship. That was kind of his task that he was trying to think of for another project. And he was sitting at a restaurant in Italy and ordered calamari. And so as the squid arrived, he started thinking about squid shapes and just started doodling. And you can see that he does all these different kinds of shapes. You can really iterate and explore a space really, really quickly. Some of them are just a single line, so you can see the sketch in profile. Some of them are a little more detailed, so you can kind of vary the level of detail or abstract into 2 dimensions if you need to, which makes it a very flexible tool for being able to explore a problem. Sketching actually lets you have a conversation with the problem, so you kind of propose different solutions and you can edit them at different levels of detail. So this is an example of an architect trying to come up with a floor plan. And you can see they start with some general sketches of like the initial floor plan. And then they come up with these very high level diagrams of just getting the dimensions, maybe how you want people to circulate in a space. And then you start to do these circles, like where do you want things to be? So you can kind of sketch different views or different versions of the possible solution in different abstractions. Then the architect tried to come up with some sort of an arrangement and found out that it doesn't work. And they found that was very quickly. If you don't try and create a solution, often you don't realize some of the problems until you actually start that solution. So then the architect backed up, continued along a different approach. It seems to work, so they did a side view of the problem and end up with their final proposal. And so you can go from these really quick, abstract, single line types of sketches down to these really refined types of detailed proposals, getting different views of the problem. And so it's really important that you have an ability and a comfort to sketch when you do design. Design, even more generally, lets you do this. Sketching is kind of like a microcosm for design in that you have this kind of exploration that you can do really rapidly and vary the fidelity. And I'd say sketch is like the notation for design. So if you had to define sketching, I would define it as a fast and ad hoc way to visually communicate and solve problems at different levels of detail. It can be learned. If you don't think you're an artist, that doesn't matter. You can learn how to sketch, and it's a different skill than visual art. And so I'd recommend learning how to draw people or interfaces very quickly. And it's not the same as actual drawing. So drawing versus sketching, with these illustrations, you have this detail. You really want to evoke something. Maybe you have some sort of aesthetic that you're trying to preserve. With sketching, you're trying to communicate, make it easy to be memorable when you're revisiting it and to communicate an idea. And so you want to master the 5 basic drawing elements: squares, circles, triangles, lines, and dots. If you're an expert with stick figures, that's good. This will serve you well. You can even develop this further by building up a visual library. And so it helps if you spend some time actually practicing to have various icons at your fingertips. Some things that are useful are house, car, iPhone, typical everyday objects. And you might have things that can then be iconic, right? If you're trying to take a global perspective, you could draw a little Earth, and that helps people remember, this is global. And so if you're doing something like sketchnoting or these more incorporating sketching into your everyday work, it becomes a really easy way to include this iconography into what you're doing. And one way to do this is to just assign yourself, have a grid of these basic objects. If you take a look at sketches or take a look at the Sketchnote Handbook by Mike Road, it walks you through how to build this visual library, and I can get you access to that book if you need to. Let's now talk about brainstorming. I want you to follow the instructions on Learn. Critique the brainstorming technique you're presented with. What's good about it? What's bad? We're going to dissect this and come up with some initial ideas for first principles of brainstorming, but for now, see what you can come up with. I'll wait.